What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, here with a look at Week 7 of the NFL season. We have a 10-game slate here on DraftKings, 11 games over on FanDuel, including the Sunday Night Football game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Jets. So like usual, I'll go through my favorite plays here for this DraftKings slate. Then we'll spend a little bit more time talking about FanDuel as well and some of the differences between the strategies for the two different sites on this weekend's slate. My favorite play, as always, first place we start, Minnesota's Justin Jefferson at wide receiver. He's going to be expensive. However, he also has the strongest role as a pass catcher in the NFL over the last 3 weeks of games for all teams. 38% of team targets from Sam Darnold in that sample, 47% of team air yards. There is not a single receiver that has a stronger role in the league on their offense than Justin Jefferson has right now. And this is one of the highest total games on the slate with a 51.5 total in betting markets, so we want some exposure to the favored Vikings here, and I think Justin Jefferson at receiver is the best way to do that. The usual agenda of the show. I like to go through the biggest favorites, talk about some of the running backs that are good plays based off of expected positive game script situations. This week, your biggest favorites on the slate are actually the Buffalo Bills, favored by 10 points at home against the Tennessee Titans. And we just got news here that James Cook is expected to play here. Unlike last week, he's really expected to play here at home for the Buffalo Bills against the Titans. Titans are average defending running backs in the running game, and they are below average defending running backs in the passing game. In Cook's absence, Ray Davis actually played really well last week for the Buffalo Bills, but he's actually questionable on this week's injury report. So seems like what the Bills did was let Cook kind of cool off last week, and now he'll have an opportunity to go back to his normal workload here against Tennessee Titans in likely the most favorable game script on the weekend. And he's actually profiling as a good high-risk play because the field is not really on James Cook here this week on either of DraftKings or FanDuel, but he is going to be playing in a really good spot. So just be aware of that. The Washington Commanders are favored by 8.5 points at home against the Carolina Panthers this weekend. Could not be a better matchup on the field for Brian Robinson, with Carolina ranking just 26th defending the rush this year and 28th defending running backs in the passing game. Robinson himself, however, limited practices all week for the second week in a row and is a true questionable game time decision for Sunday. So if Brian Robinson is unable to go, our attention is going to turn to Austin Eckler in this backfield, see if he can do anything with his touches. Unlike last week against the Baltimore Ravens, we're going to play this one right up until lock on Sunday. And obviously the challenge here is that this game does lock in the middle of the day at 4:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So as a result, the field is not going to be super into playing either of these guys, no matter who it is that is starting for the Commanders on Sunday. But as of right now, we have Robinson projected in for his normal workload as the starter, and he's actually the number one running back in the Occupy model this week. So I would say he's a strong high-risk play. The only highly favored running back that's actually going to be super popular this week is Los Angeles Rams starter Kyren Williams. Do think he is the number one play for your low-risk lineups as a result on each of DraftKings and FanDuel. Kyren is going to be facing a Raiders defense at home that is 27th on the year defending the rush and 21st defending running backs in the passing game. Not as much opportunity in the passing game for Kyren as we saw last year thus far, but should still see 20 to 25 touches in this backfield in a really strong game environment for the Rams. So I think he's the clear starting point for low-risk lineups at the running back position. Now, the popular plays at running back this week, a pair of guys that are underdogs but still have bell cow roles. Once again, Chuba Hubbard with the Carolina Panthers, but at his likely 15 carry, 4 to 6 target floor here, which is basically what we've seen all year long. It's hard to argue with the workload here for Chuba Hubbard against the Washington Commanders, and the field agrees it's going to be the most popular play on DraftKings and one of the 3 most popular running backs you can play on FanDuel this week as a result. Behind him, even more popular, I think, now that we have confirmation that his teammate Tyjae Spears is going to be inactive on Sunday, Tony Pollard as a huge 10-point underdog against the Buffalo Bills, still projecting as one of the most popular running back plays on this slate. Should also see 20 to 25 touches despite being a massive underdog here. The Bills are 7th defending the rush this year, but they are the worst defense defending running backs in the passing game. So hopefully Pollard is able to soak up a few more targets from whoever is playing quarterback for Tennessee this week. That's the other thing here. Will Levis is questionable for Tennessee. So this entire Tennessee offense is in flux. This is one of those situations where this might actually be a really good fade in tournaments, but Tony Pollard absolutely going to be extremely popular in low risk this week. The final two near the top of the ownership table here, Atlanta's Bijan Robinson, finally saw him have a big game last weekend here against the Seattle Seahawks at home. He's expected to be popular once again. And then on the other side of this game, Kenneth Walker with the Seattle Seahawks is going to be one of the 5 most popular plays on this slate. So I do think he's worth considering in low-risk lineups as well. At quarterback, sticking with Seattle, I think we're going to see the field go back to the formula of mid-range to cheap quarterback in their low-risk lineups on DraftKings and FanDuel. At $5,800 here on DraftKings, Geno Smith has an opportunity to be one of the most popular plays in this range as a result. The other play that I think the field will be all over here is going to be Minnesota's Sam Darnold. I like Sam Darnold for both low and high risk contests this week, especially like him for high risk contests because Justin Jefferson, favorite wide receiver play, and his teammate Jordan Addison are both underperforming wide receivers this week. So I think this is a really good way to differentiate a little bit in tournaments. Let's play Sam Darnold with 2 of his best pass catchers, not just that, but 2 of the best pass catchers in the league in a what should be up-tempo, high-scoring game against the Detroit Lions, who have plenty of bring-back options for high-risk contests with their running backs, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with Jameson Williams at wide receiver. So that's how initially I feel like I'm handling the quarterback situation for low-risk contests on this slate. Wide receiver, already went over the fact that I like Justin Jefferson a lot this week. There are a couple of value spots that the field is going to play pretty heavily here on DraftKings and FanDuel this week. The first of which is going to be the Cleveland Browns as an offense. I understand this has been the most pathetic offense in the league this season. However, when we're looking at an environment where 32 teams in the league still play 50 to 65 snaps on offense, and these players are going to have opportunities to touch the football and generate fantasy points, we officially have a situation here where all of Cleveland's players are underpriced because when salaries were released, we were still under the impression that Amari Cooper was going to be playing for Cleveland this Sunday. He has been traded to Buffalo, but the salaries do not change for any of these guys. Jerry Jeudy, number 1 wide receiver now for the Cleveland Browns, just $4,800 here on Sunday against the Cincinnati Bengals. I think he will clearly be the most popular play on the Browns as a result, and he really makes a lot of the better plays in your lowest lineups fit this week at that cost. His teammate at wide receiver, Elijah Moore, should see an increase in reps with Amari out of there, and he's just $3,200 here on DraftKings. These guys are super cheap over on FanDuel as well. Jeudy will be more popular on FanDuel than Moore. Moore might be more popular here on DraftKings than on FanDuel just because the salary cap's a little bit tighter here. Trey Tucker did run the most routes at wide receiver for the Raiders with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers out last week. Once again, he will be in that situation. Devontae Adams no longer on the Raiders. He's now a New York Jet. Jacoby Myers is going to sit again this weekend. He caught a doubtful tag on the final injury report here, which means he's almost certainly out on Sunday. Just 2 targets last week, no box score result for Trey Tucker, and that's why his salary didn't move, but the usage was strong. Ran 100% of the routes for them here. Everything just went to Brock Bowers from Aiden O'Connell. So hopefully Trey Tucker, squeaky wheel gets the oil here, $4,200, specifically on DraftKings, a really good value play. And then the best value play on DraftKings is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster at wide receiver. Have some reports from Chiefs media that this questionable tag is purely administrative. He's fully expected to play on Sunday. Andy Reid is the one who actually reported that to the media as well. So straight from the horse's mouth there. We saw him step into a really large role last time the Chiefs played. They were on bye last week with Rashee Rice out for the season. So he should be taking over one of the top 2 wide receiver roles here for the duration of the season, as long as he can stay on the field. And at just $4,000 here on a DraftKings main slate, this is where we've got to punish the pricing algo here in a PPR format and just play Juju Smith-Schuster in low-risk contests at $4,000. He should have a 6-target floor. Realistically, should probably see a little bit more than that in a Super Bowl rematch here with the San Francisco 49ers for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I do think you're going to see the field play a couple of these values here, like Juju and Jeudy and Justin Jefferson to finish off a lineup. We don't have a defense that cheap, so you'd have to massage the salaries here a little bit to make that fit. But this is effectively where I do think the field is in low-risk contests over on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, similar situation. We want to make sure we have Kyron Williams in as a running back. I do think you're going to see the Giants defense be pretty popular over here on FanDuel. Our model at least seems to think so. When we sort by projected ownership, they're the most popular defense play this week at just $3,200 over on FanDuel, ahead of the Falcons and the Panthers. And on DraftKings, we're expecting the Cleveland Browns, Buffalo Bills, and the Bengals to be very popular options, but the Giants right there as well at 8%. Our number one defense that we like for all contest types are the favored Rams, but they are in this kind of mid-range that might be difficult to get to depending on what you're trying to play at other positions. So I'm trying to get to the Rams, but if I can't, I don't mind coming all the way down to the New York Giants against Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles this week if necessary. Juju is 6,100 here, which is right in line with a lot of other plays at the wide receiver position on FanDuel. So he's not as good of a value here on FanDuel as he is over on DraftKings. Jerry Jeudy is under $6,000, which is a really good value on FanDuel, so we want to make sure we probably go there. And just to look at some of the other guys I already talked about, Trey Tucker, 5,500 will be here as a value. Elijah Moore, 4,600. We can certainly go there if we need to. I'm just not certain that we actually need to. Hope that makes sense. Colby Parkinson, I had him in the DraftKings build. Didn't really talk about tight end just yet. 3,800 here on DraftKings, 5,200 over on FanDuel. He's on our underperforming wide receiver list at the tight end position. So in the Rams' last 3 games, he has seen 25% of team targets and 18% of team air yards. Very hard for tight ends to crack our underperforming wide receiver list, but we do use a different formula for tight ends and wide receivers when Moose and Brian create the list. And the fact that Parkinson has still not, or at least in the 3-week sample, has not scored a touchdown, hasn't scored one all season, in fact, that's a big contributor to why he is on our underperforming tight end list this week at the position. Still seeing extremely strong usage. You see 5+ targets in 4 out of the 5 games the Rams have played this year, and then obviously outrageous usage over the last couple of weeks with both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua unavailable. So I do think we want to keep an eye on that Cooper Kupp questionable tag on Sunday to see how that affects Parkinson. But whether or not Kupp is in or out, Parkinson is going to play a ton. It's just a matter of where the football is going to go. And if Kupp is on the field, I do think we can dock his projection slightly in our model. Right now, we are projecting Cooper Kupp in the Occupy model, and Parkinson is not like our top-ranked tight end, but probably a really, really strong play based off of context clues here, previous opportunity, and matchup here against the Las Vegas Raiders here in Week 7. Other tight end plays, our model is really, really high on George Kittle as like a high-risk play. Brock Bowers should also see a ton of targets once again with nobody else available for the Raiders. And then sticking with the underpriced player narrative, we do have David Njoku with the Cleveland Browns at $4,100. Probably is going to be the actual number 1 target in this offense. 7 targets last week. Finally seems to be playing full complement of snaps once again with Deshaun Watson. So you'll have that combination of Njoku, Jerry Jeudy, and Elijah Moore at receiver. Those will probably see your majority of the passing opportunities there in Cleveland. And I do think here on FanDuel, you got Parkinson $5,200, Kittle, who we like, is $7,500, Bowers $7,000, and Njoku down here at $5,300. I mean, you really can't go wrong with either of these guys in this price range to make some other more interesting things fit with your lineups this week. Once again, my favorite thing to do in high-risk contests this week is double stack Minnesota with some of these Detroit bringbacks. So we have Sam Darnold. I've already got Justin Jefferson in here. Jordan Addison is also an underperforming wide receiver this week. 6,300 here on FanDuel. I got 71 per player remaining. I think this might be a week where we can go with 4 receivers on DraftKings and FanDuel just to make the rest of the lineup fit. If I go with the build that I have on the screen here, I got $6,100 left for a flex here on FanDuel, and I'm going to be looking at Juju if I want to here. He's going to be less popular on FanDuel than on DraftKings, so he might be a good tournament play. But you see on the screen here in the flex menu, there are plenty of plays in this range. Just the vast majority of the good ones to consider are going to be wide receivers. So I do think 4 wide receiver builds are viable on both sites this week. Jumping back over to DraftKings for a full tournament lineup, stacking Minnesota. and Detroit. I'm going to stick with David Montgomery as my favorite of the two running backs there in that backfield to play, just based off of his goal line role. Not as involved in the passing game. It is, admittedly flipping a weighted coin here, but I do like the David Montgomery side. My favorite weighted game stack in general is to go with two pass catchers and then use a running back on the other side, just because I feel like this has the highest chance of hitting a ceiling. It seems to correlate a little bit better that way. Talked about the values at wide receiver that I think will be very popular here on DraftKings. Jerry Jeudy, Juju Smith-Schuster with Kansas City. We can come down to the Giants defense. I've got 5,900 per player remaining. I need a running back and a tight end here to finish off my lineup. I, believe it or not, have enough salary dollars to play Kyren Williams, and there are tight end plays in this range that are viable to finish off a lineup. I think most notably, based off of injury, we have Grant Calcaterra with the Philadelphia Eagles. That is an option now with Dallas Goedert out. But if you're not comfortable with that play, I think you can come off of Jeudy, play a different wide receiver value here, and get to one of the more popular tight ends that we're advocating for on this slate in both low and high risk contests, like a Colby Parkinson, and figure out your final wide receiver, depending on where you want to go here. I think you can come up to our top defense, and there's one wide receiver I mentioned earlier that's a value this week that I think fits for the final spot in this particular high risk build. Underperforming wide receivers in general. We have Justin Jefferson, talked about him off the top of the video, Jordan Addison with Minnesota. Two more to be aware of. Leading the NFL with 433 air yards over the last 3 weeks of play and no touchdowns in that sample is DK Metcalf with the Seattle Seahawks. And we also have on Sunday Night Football, again, because he was underperforming for us last week, we have George Pickens with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who was kind enough to inform us today that Russell Wilson will be making his debut for the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. So something that will be a little off the wall, I think, if you want to get different. That's a FanDuel only kind of stack. Play Pickens at wide receiver. I think you can play the Jets side here. You can get Rodgers. You can get a cheap Devontae Adams. You got $9,500 left. You could double stack Rodgers, and you've got plenty of money here to figure out what you want to do with that final spot, and plenty of plays here in this range to finish off your lineup here on FanDuel. Something off the beaten path, not featured in our daily plug because I do think this is a little bit lower than my three favorite games this week: Minnesota, Detroit, San Francisco, Kansas City. And I actually do like Philadelphia and the New York Giants a little bit on this slate, especially with Malik Neighbors back in the fold at wide receiver. Malik Neighbors seeing an absurd 45 of 98 team targets in the last 3 full games that he played. You see it right here on the screen, 12 plus targets, weeks 2 through 4. He comes in almost $1,000 cheaper than Justin Jefferson as well. We have the cheap Grant Calcaterra play. We know the ceiling is there for A.J. Brown and for Devontae Smith. And we have a mobile quarterback on both sides of this game in Daniel Jones and Jalen Hurts that we can consider as well. So lots of fun, different, exciting ways to play this in high risk. I can't wait to see how everything plays out this weekend. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because you'll get notified as soon as Brian and Moose schedule that live show. It's been kind of a different time every single week on Saturdays, but we do that every Saturday. And of course, it's available on the archive for you to watch back before we kick off on Sunday afternoon as well. Good luck here in week number 7, and I'll be back next week to talk to you about week 8.